चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्त वृंद की, श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की, श्री वृंदावन धाम की, श्री मथुरा धाम की, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की, मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की, गंगा माई की, यमुना माई की, भक्ति देवी की, Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Book Distribution Ki, Nitai Gop Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. This morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class, we're reading from Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 11. Chapter is titled, Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Jai, Haribol. Okay, before we recite the verse, we recite the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thus of our text 11, Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 11. Thus of avatsisva srashtasho sahasram parivatsaran tena narayano nama yad apa purushodbhava Tasu avatsit svasrishtaso sahasram parivatsaran tena narayano nama yad apa purushodbhava tasu avatsit svasrishtaso Sahasram parivatsaran Tena narayano nama Yad apa purushodbhava. Tashu, in that Avatsit resided, Swa, own, Shrishtasu, in the matter of creation, Sahasram, 1,000, Parivatsaran, years of his measurement, Tena, for that reason, Narayana, the personality of Godhead named Narayana. Nama, name. Yat, because. Apa, water. Purusha Udbhava, emanated from the Supreme Person. translation. So there's no purport, so I'll read the translation and I'll do the verse and the translation purport for the next verse. So, translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. That Supreme Person is not impersonal and therefore is distinctively a Nara or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara. And because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayana. Text 12. Dravyam karma chakalascha svabhavo jiva evacha yad anugrahata shanti na shanti yadupekshaya. Translation. One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all exist by His mercy only. And as soon He does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. The living entities are the enjoyers of the material ingredients, time, modes, etc. because they want to lord it over the material nature. The Lord is the supreme enjoyer, and the living entities are meant to assist the Lord in His enjoyment, and thus participate in the transcendental enjoyment of everyone. The enjoyer and the enjoyed both participate in enjoyment, but deluded by the illusory energy, the living entities want to become the enjoyer like the Lord, although they are not meant for such enjoyment. The jivas, the living entities, are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as the Lord's superior nature, or para prakriti, and so also it is mentioned in the Vishnu Purana. Therefore, the living entities are never the Purushas or the factual enjoyers. As such, the spirit of enjoyment by the living entity in the material world is false. In the spiritual world, the living entities are pure in nature, and therefore they are associates in the enjoyment of the Supreme Lord. In the material world, the spirit of enjoyment of the living entities by dint of their own actions, karma, gradually fades by the laws of nature, and thus the illusory energy dictates in the ears of the conditioned souls that they should become one with the Lord. This is the last snare of the illusory energy. When the last illusion is also cleared off by the mercy of the Lord, the living entity again becomes reinstated in his original position and thus becomes actually liberated. For this attainment of liberation from the material clutches, the Lord creates the material world, maintains it for some time, 1,000 years of His measurement, as stated in the previous verse, and then again annihilates it by His will. The living entities are therefore completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, and all their so-called enjoyments by scientific improvement are crushed into dust when the Lord desires. Om Gyantimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatirubhascha kripa sindhubhaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I'll just read the translation for text 11 and 12. Text 11. That Supreme Person is not impersonal and therefore is distinctively a Nara or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara. And because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayana. Text 12. One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all exist by His mercy only. And as soon as He does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent. I see Ishwar Prabhu is quite ecstatic to hear the last bit. So as we read in the last 3 or 4 verses, in the conclusion of the last, if you see text 9, and where there's a mention on the previous verses of 3 elements or three persons, Adi Daivik, Adi Bhautik and Adi Atmik. And in response to that, in text 9, it says all 3 of the above mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being, who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter, is independent of all, and therefore He is the supreme shelter. And that's the difficulty we face in this world, because we want to be independent. And as this text describes in text 12, the living entities, the purport, the living entities are the enjoyers of the material ingredients, time, modes, etc., because they want to lord it over the material nature. And you see this tendency in us come and go from time to time. Actually not go, but just stay. Even in this given situation where we are faced with a pandemic, somewhere or the other within our heart we feel that this pandemic won't affect us. We are above COVID. COVID's just, something that someone has created. And we really won't, it's not a big deal. But reality speaks a different picture. Just a week ago, everything just seemed like, it was back to normal. And now, all our plans. In fact, I know so many people yesterday, some that I can't name, were actually praying that, please, they were actually making some very intense prayers that please give some intelligence to, the authorities, that they don't take away, that they don't impose any further restrictions, because that'll take away from our plans that we had made. So we see that time and time again, each time we feel that we are independent, or any situation that we are in, that we don't really want to be subservient to what's happening. Krishna, or higher authorities impose on us certain restrictions or certain elements which make us feel dependent on them, and that at times is very unsettling. And as I was reading through this verse, this purport actually, it reminded me of various instances in the Bhagavatam itself. And Srila Prabhupada makes such a beautiful, in a poetic sense, the concluding line of this purport, the living entities are therefore completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, and all their so-called enjoyments by scientific improvement are crushed into dust when the Lord desires. So, you see in the Bhagavatam that there are certain pastimes that take place, and when we read it, when we look at it from the mundane perspective, it just seems like that what's really happening here. We feel that, is Krishna really living up to to his claim in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, last verse, Bhuktaram Jagatapasam, I'm the, supreme benefactor of all living entities, I'm the well-wisher. But when we read certain pastimes in the Bhagavatam, which I'll elaborate on in a second, sometimes our intelligence tends to, give us the picture that is Krishna really, the benefactor? Is Krishna really acting in the best interest of his devotees? And if you read the first canto, chapter 9, passing away of Bhishma Dev in the presence of Krishna. And in that he says, verse 12 to be precise, he says, he's lying on his deathbed. And, as we read in the 9th chapter that he's lying on his deathbed and it's very painful. He's lying on a deathbed of arrows. And Krishna asks, prior to that incident, Krishna asks all the Pandavas to dress up and let's go and see Bhishma Dev. One may ask, why is Krishna asking them to dress up? Is he wanting Bhishma Dev to realize that, what is he missing out on? Is he trying to trying to tell the Pandavas how Bhishma Dev is so attached to the throne? Well, no. I was hearing a very nice class by His Grace Govinda Prabhu yesterday. He was saying that Krishna wants to prove that how Bhishma Dev was looking forward to this very moment when he'd see virtuous kings on the throne. And this was his dream, to see a truly qualified person sitting on the throne and ruling this planet or that kingdom, who actually deserved it. And when he would see it, his eyes would, naturally, he'd feel ecstatic. So in that verse, Bhishma Dev says, he sympathizes, he sees that Yudhishthira Maharaj is feeling very despondent of what has just happened. A massacre of that scale, 18 million people have just been massacred, been killed. And he feels himself to be a part of, that whole plan. And Bhishma Dev tries to console him by saying that it's due to an injustice that you were dethroned. And you had to fight this injustice, and that's, this is all, you had to fight this injustice, and now that you've been reinstated to this throne, don't feel despondent. He was trying to assure him in that way. But then he speaks some very beautiful verses where he says, he's sympathizing with the Pandavas, that how could you, he's telling Yudhishthira, being the son of religion personified, and having Arjuna and Bhima on your side, how could you all suffer so much? It just, it doesn't, 2 + 2 = 4 doesn't really, it doesn't resonate with him. And it doesn't resonate with us too, because Yudhishthira is a son of religion, a son of dharma. He's virtuous personified. And so a lot of times it is, and then he concludes by saying, because you had the blessing of the Brahmanas, blessing of religion, and blessing of the Lord on your side, that's why you all could overcome all of that, all those calamities that you all had to go through. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes that, and he goes on to say that even having Krishna on your side, you all went through so much. And in that purport, Srila Prabhupada briefly describes that, usually in this world, one needs, both spiritual and material assets to succeed. Obviously, they had the spiritual assets because Maharaj Yudhishthira is the son of Dharma. They were virtuous since, their birth, and more or less they basically had the Supreme Lord on their side, and they had the best of warriors as Arjuna and Bhima. So how could they suffer so much? And then he beautifully describes. He says, "This is all due to inconceivable time." And he quotes a beautiful analogy. That analogy is where how cloud carries the air, or the air carries the clouds. And similarly, we all carried by this time. And a couple of verses later, he describes time as, in Sanskrit, described as kala. Kala. He says, Kala indicates the inexplicable wish of the Lord. And he goes on to say, "O king, no one can know the plan of Krishna. Great philosophers from time immemorial have inquired exhaustively, and they are bewildered." The plan of the Lord was to establish the kingdom of virtue. And for that purpose, whatever little suffering, the Pandavas had to go through was just to help in establishing a kingdom of virtue that was desired by the Lord. So this aspect of time being non-different from the Lord. And in the material world, obviously time is represented in this material world as the plan of the Lord. So a lot of times we just don't know what's the plan of the Lord. In fact, I remember this one pastor, Srila Prabhupada, in New York, very early days. He was very, very early, I think maybe in the first year or two. I think he may have been in, where Prabhupada? Butler, Pennsylvania. That's where Prabhupada was. And he came across or maybe it was in New York, I can't remember, one of those. And he was sitting with a gentleman. He was sitting in a park, and a gentleman, noticing Srila Prabhupada's saintly, amazing, saintly qualities and some effulgence around Srila Prabhupada that was, that he could perceive. He just came and sat next to Prabhupada there and said, "Can I speak to you?" And he said, "Yeah, you can speak to me." And they started chatting, and then the professor introduced himself as, "I'm this and this, I've done this and this." And then he turned over to Srila Prabhupada asking, "Who are you?" And Srila Prabhupada said, "Oh, my name is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. I'm from India. I'm a teacher, and we have all these wonderful, communities all over the world. We have these temples. There are so many devotees." And this person is thinking, okay. And then Srila Prabhupada said, "All of it is there, but it's just separated by time." It's just time that's separating it. And this person was so amazed. He didn't dismiss it as being something, as something being trivial. He was so amazed by Srila Prabhupada's amazing qualities. And most importantly, you could see that it's Srila Prabhupada's dependence on the Lord. In fact, in so many occasions, and I was once hearing His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu say that when you read the Leelamrita, when you read the first part of the Leelamrita, prior to Prabhupada leaving for America, a lot of times we tend to just skip over that section of the Leelamrita and go directly to the part when Srila Prabhupada came to America. But if you really see from the time Srila Prabhupada took initiation or met a spiritual master, and then subsequently a decade, 10, 11 years later, taking initiation from a spiritual master, from that point, from the time he met a spiritual master, he was just focused on this one mission of how will I please my guru, of how will I carry out this instruction that's been given by my spiritual master. And he's persevering in many different ways. For those 40 years, he gave his all in all. You could clearly see that he was working on printing books or magazines, working on his sadhana, really intensely praying when he was at the tomb of Sri Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. So that is why you see the first part of the Leelamrita is titled as a lifetime of preparation. It's not that Srila Prabhupada could have easily come and said, "Oh, I'm I'm a Senapati Bhakta, that's it. Let me just board the let me just get my chartered plane now and just land me in America, and then I will do the rest. No, by his own example, he's saying what it takes to completely depend on the Lord. And now he'd feel so much ecstasy by doing so. In fact, I think in the later years, some disciples asked Srila Prabhupada about his first 2 years in America. And actually this was in the movie Hare Krishna. I believe it's in the movie Hare Krishna, in which Srila Prabhupada says that even though you could see Prabhupada didn't have any of those resources, any help, but he said, I was never alone. I always had the guidance of my spiritual master. I'm paraphrasing it, but the gist of it is that he was always dependent on the mercy of his spiritual master and Krishna and the Acharyas to carry out what he did. And because he was always dependent on the mercy of the Lord through the agency of his spiritual master, we see how he could achieve something that in one sense not even the previous Acharyas could, if you really look at Srila Prabhupada's glorious achievements. So then we move on to another time where this mention of time is brought about is in the 8th canto. Chapter 6, where I think the chapter is titled, The Demons and Demigods Declare Truce. And I won't get into this, the complete story yet, but it happens to be that the demons, the demigods are deprived of their heavenly, basically of their heavenly position where they were situated at. So they feel deprived, and in that moment they go and seek shelter of the Lord. They approach Lord Brahma, and then, as usual, as it's described in so many parts of the Bhagavatam, whenever the demigods have a problem, they go to Brahma, and Brahma just tells, okay, let's go on a road trip to Shvetadvip, to the Milk Ocean, where they all chant the Purusha Shukta prayers, and then after some time the Lord appears and then gives them an instruction, and then they go, and then they basically go back. So again, they do the same thing here. They approach Lord Brahma, and then they go to the Milk Ocean, and they recite these prayers, and the Lord, it said that at first that they couldn't even see the Lord because of the effulgence. But then finally, the Lord, out of His causeless mercy, gives them access, and Brahma sees the Lord, and the Lord says, and he says such a beautiful, he makes such a beautiful statement, saying, he tells the demigods, as long as you are not flourishing, you should make a truce with the demons who are now being favored by time. Again, you see time, right? And he said that time is not on your side. So now you go and make a truce with them. And in the subsequent verse, Srila Prabhupada in the purport, or actually that verse itself, Srila Prabhupada in the purport quotes the snake and mouse logic. And it's actually a very deep point that's been made there, that a snake and a mouse, both snake and a mouse are trapped in a basket. And even though the snake knows, the mouse knows that the mouse is food for the snake. And the snake knows very well if he eats the mouse, he can't get out of the basket. So he tells the mouse, you make a little hole there, and don't worry, and then once you make a hole, we'll both get out. And what happens? As soon as the mouse makes a hole, the snake eats the mouse, and the snake gets out of the basket. From the hole, the mouse is created. So similarly, it's such a deep point that a lot of times, even in this material world, for us to get something done, even though it's in service to the Lord, we may have to we may have to turn our enemies into allies just for, the sake of service to the Lord. And it happens time and time again. A lot of times when we have to go and obtain permits, or we have to obtain some permissions for some important festivals, we have to request to certain people, certain authorities who, in one sense, are demoniac, or their values or the way they present themselves are not aligned to what we are aligned to practice. But yet, still, we have to seek permission because, in one sense, Krishna has put them in that position. So we, again, as service to Krishna, we have to approach them and ask them, please, kind sir, you're so great. Please give us permission for this little for this festival that we're doing. And I think I think it's a morning walk, or it's in the book Perfect Question, Perfect Answer. I can't remember. Srila Prabhupada is again telling this, that if we approach a rich man and tell him that everything belongs to Krishna, so that therefore you have to give, you have to utilize all your assets, all your resources in service to Krishna, that rich person or that influential person will basically just turn us away from their doorstep, or they won't even entertain us. But if we tell them, oh, kind sir, you are known for your magnanimous qualities, you're so great, kindly give us some little bit so that we can build a temple, we can build, we need permission for them, then the rich person would be like, oh, yes, please take that. So we have to engage whatever we can in the service of the Lord. So I felt that was very instructive. And then later on, when we move on to the next chapter, which is where Lord Shiva drinks the poison. What's that? Hala poison or Kalakuta poison? Yeah, so there's a poison that's basically spreading all over the universe. And guess what happens then? The Lord, along with all the demigods, goes to Lord Shiva to petition him to drink the poison. And in that purport, actually it is 8.7.19, it is said that it can be bewildering because the Lord is right there and he's joining the demigods in making certain prayers, in offering certain prayers to Lord Shiva to please drink the poison. So one may ask, why is the Lord can just fix the situation right away? Why is he asking the demigods to go and offer praise to Lord Shiva? Because it's said in the purport that because the Lord wants to give credit to his devotee, Lord Shiva. So he's, just to give glory to his devotee, he's joining there. And we see that even in the life of Srila Prabhupada. And it's, a lot of times this can be a bit, inconceivable to our understanding, because we see here, in one sense, when Srila Prabhupada is successful, he's saying, oh, it is all due to this, he was giving the credit to his disciples. He was actually giving this credit to, his spiritual master, but he's like, it's my spiritual master who has sent all of you all to help me in this mission. And now if the disciple says, yes, it's only because of us, that's not, that's just stupidity, that they are taking glory for themselves. So a devotee never takes credit for whatever he or she does. He indeed passes on that credit to the Lord. And the Lord too wants to give credit to the devotee. So what's actually true? And the fact is that both of them hold true, because both of them are seeking it from a different perspective. So this very fact of us being dependent on the mercy of the Lord is something that I would say in this material world, it's seen through the agency of time. Sometimes it's just the situation that we put in, we just hunker down and we just surrender to the Lord, because the truth is we just can't know the plan of the Lord. Because if we were to know, that means we are Krishna, which we are not. So this point is made from time and time again, that Everything happens by the will of the Lord. And if we surrender, if we truly understand, and it's a realization too, that the Lord is the ultimate benefactor, He's the ultimate well-wisher of all living entities. And His Holiness Radhanath Swami always, I've heard so many of his lectures from the 90s, and in the Pune, he would take the devotees on parikram. He said, if you just are able to grasp, or to some extent even conceive of this one principle, the Lord is the well-wisher of all living entities, we'd make so much of advancement, or we would, our lives, we'd see our life from a totally different perspective, because our conditioning puts us in a position where we want to control. We want to be the controllers of our situations, but the truth is that we are not, we have minute controllers to some extent, but we're not the only controllers. We are just one-fifth of the whole picture. So, that's what I was reflecting on, how this aspect of time, and how the Lord mentioned it in the Bhagavatam through His devotees, and also we see in the 8th canto that He could have easily fixed whatever situation, rectified the situation that was at hand, but He just said, you're not being favored by time, so just go and make truce, and in due course of time we'll see. And we see that it was the Lord's desire to enjoy some pastimes as Kurmadev, and there's so much that happens in those in that 8th canto, from the time the demigods are deprived of their position, that they have to go through so much. So I'll stop here if there are any questions or comments. Yeah, sure. Inexplicable wish of the Lord, yeah. So is he saying that I'm not on your side? Mm. Mm. They were struggling. Yeah, they were. And the beauty of this whole churning of the milk ocean pastime is that at each time they encounter some difficulty. The Lord comes in, okay, He first comes as I forget the different incarnations, but basically it's Kurmadev, and then he first comes and I can't remember the name of the incarnation, but who basically takes the mountain and Yes. So, at each instance, you see the Lord doing all the work. I mean, each time they get tired, like, okay, I'll come and do it, and it's yes, why? And it's question why. Yeah, no, it's even. Like when Guru Maharaj said, when they were building the Ras Bihari temple in Mumbai, in India, devotees went through so much of struggle, including Srila Prabhupada. Like, he'd spent, I think the longest time he spent in any place was actually, outside of America, in one center itself was actually the Juhu temple. I think he spent at least 3+ months in one place. It had never happened. And they went through so much. Like there are instances where devotees wouldn't have any water. They would have the water supply cut off by the person who owned the property, and they would have that place was infested with rats and mice. They'd have to sleep with that. They'd have to wake up every morning, go wherever they were to just take a bath and come. So all these austerities devotees were going through, and today we see a magnificent temple there, and we wouldn't even know that this temple devotees went to so much austerity to do it through. Again, this is the plan of the Lord. So how do we understand? It's like I said, if we were to understand that means then we would be Lord, but we are not. Thank you. Okay. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Go Premanandi.